Well, for people who don't know us, we are an architectural company in south of Holland. We're a little bit, I think, 10, 15 minutes under Rotterdam, and we have a company of 60, 65 people, and one of our main focuses is educational buildings. So we design buildings for elementary schools, high schools, so primary education. And well, we are always searching for the question behind the question. So it's always something more behind the question. What is our mission? It's in Dutch, respectful rentmeesterschap, and rentmeesterschap means something like stewardship for the people who don't know the term. Um, we are trying to take care for the world after us. So we feel the urge to leave the world as a better place. And how do you do that? Well, we stand for two things. We try to make healthy buildings, buildings that actually provable healthy. So we're starting up labs right now to see, okay, whatever we designed, is that actually aiding the health of the people living in the buildings? And we try to do that with use of nature, daylight, and all the things. And we also try to make our building future-oriented. It's a little bit different than future-proof because we think that future-proof, then, well, you make the buildings and you hope that they prove to be good in the future. And if you design for future-oriented, you think about it, okay, what are the buildings going to be in the future? So basically, we try to make a clear and generic grid or basic design, so adaptation in the future is always easy possible. And we realize that the living environment shapes us. So it's not only us who shape the living environment, but the living environment shape us also. So we try to make architecture that pleases and offers comfort and is pleasant to use. And we design for the future, so that answers to the future needs of buildings. And over here, maybe some of you know the scheme, and I'll try to explain it later, but we always try to build up our buildings by the layers of brand. Is anyone familiar with that theory? That you all, well, the theory of the layers of brand is that all buildings exist from different elements. So you have the structure, you have the skin, you have the space plan, and all these elements have a different lifespan. So if you design them like separately and you don't intertwine them, then you easily can change them in the future. So for example, the structure of a building might be here for the next 40, 50 years, but the space plan might change every 5 or 10 years. And also the stuff that's in it, so the furniture might even change every 2 years. So that's what we try to do to keep these layers separate. And of course, we are careful with the things that are exhaustive. So all the materials we use, we think about, are they circular? So are they bio-based? Can we use them again? So we try to be careful and think about the materials that consume a lot of energy or a lot of water and space to use. So we go for the circular elements. So I'm going to focus on the future-oriented part and also on the healthy part. So I'm going to show some examples of the buildings that we designed, and also a part of the history and how we came to the buildings that we're designing right now and how we're looking forward in the future. So of course, the vision of schools, of the educational vision changes. A couple of, well, maybe you all grew up with schools with classrooms, 20, 25, 30 people in a classroom, and then 10 classrooms in a school building, and that was it. So the vision of education, so now there are some with free spaces where to live. So because this is changing every 5 or 10 years, we also need to design buildings that can adapt to these changes of vision. So if let's say you go from these classes into small groups, then the building should adapt to it. Well, this is a renovation we did, and I'm showing you this because this is done by a famous architect, Hugh Maaskant. He's a famous architect in Rotterdam, and he designed a building with a really clear grid. And for us, it was like a pleasure to renovate this building because easily use all the structure. There was already thought about the different layers back then in 1960. So we used the structure and we made a new base plan with the program that they required right now. So that's a little bit that's changed than the original idea, but just because the space plan was so usable, we could some removal of the floors, removal of some ceilings. We could bring in the light back, and we could still make it a pleasant educational building, as you can see in here. Then the next project, this is a project a couple of years ago, and it was built for the Wood and Furniture College in Rotterdam. So they design furniture over there, and they have a big lab. So we tried to separate the lab and the classrooms, and we made a generic building where they can also change the walls inside. So the orange part is the generic building with the classrooms, and the lower part is where they make the furniture. And well, as you can see here in the picture, and what we did was that we used the students, and all the students work for the space plan. So yeah, we only made some ideas of where there could be walls, and the students used yeah, their craftsmanship for the space plan. Well, you can see it in here. It's a very yeah, school where they show what they are doing, and we only made this generic structure, and they filled in the space plan. This is another yeah, example of how we use the layers of brand, and the hardest thing always is to keep these layers separate, just not on a yeah, concept level, but also on a actual practical level, because of course you need to you need to add the walls to the columns, so you need to add the space plan to the structure, and of course you need to take care of that the sound that it's actually soundproof in between classrooms. So we are really looking for how can we make these details in just a way that, you know, we can easily change the space plan, but it's still yeah, the quality that you actually want from a building. So we always make this exploded views with all the different elements. So we have the space plan, we have the stuff, we have the services, because services are in school buildings are actually a really important part. Well, yeah, over here, like all the school buildings, they have at least 1 meter of surfaces flowing through the or above the ceiling. So it's always yeah, good to keep in mind that you make a building where there is plenty of room for the services and you can change them. So either it's ducts for air or it's electricity for light and stuff. You need to make sure that you can easily change that also in the future. So what we did over here was made a grid of concrete, and we filled it in with different plants. And yeah, you can see it in some pictures over here. I think this is a clear picture where you see the structure of the grid, you see the space plan, and you can also imagine that in the future there might be a floor extra, or we put out a floor if the program is changing in the future. So it's adaptable building. Yeah, and of course we also try to make it a healthy building with a lot of daylight, with plenty of light and some green walls. And this is the next step, the next version, because for the other buildings I showed you there, if you design a school building, there's always this program of requirements. So let's say they want 20 classrooms and 10 offices and stuff. So we make a building that's actually fitted to this program of requirements. But this for this school, there was no program of requirements because the school doesn't know yet. There was only this idea that, okay, we have so many students, so we need so many square meters, and we're going to find out how the school building is going to be, because the design process takes up to 3-4 years, and maybe the vision on how the school should look like changes. So what we did over here, we made a really a repeatable grid with just 4 within the structure, and we made 4 staircases where you can make a complete different space plan around. And how it's going to look like, the space plan, we don't know yet. We'll see it just right before start of actual building. But we made a center hall which is connected to the site. We believe that these this sort of rock is always going to be there. It's never going to change because this is the heart of the building. But how all the other classrooms and how all the other offices are going to look like, we don't know yet. And the same we did for the facade at this project. So compared to the previous project I showed, we also try to continue this in the facade. So you can take out the facade. There's this grid which is always going to be there, but yeah, sometimes you need a window, sometimes you need a closed frame. So we designed the facade in a way that you can change it and actually also adapt it in the future. And this is what it might go to look like. So that was the stuff about the future-oriented thing we're looking for, but we also really focused on healthy buildings. And my colleague always says this, of course, you all heard of the Bouwbesluit, like the building regulations. It was invented in 1900 to not die in your buildings. Basically, that's why they made the building regulations. So because people were dying in buildings, so they came these regulations that buildings should be a certain level amount so people don't die in it. Well, up till today, still people think that if your buildings follow the requirements of the Bouwbesluit, of the building regulations, it's good. But to be honest, I think these regulations can be a little bit sharper because yeah, if you want to really have a healthy building, you should have plenty of daylight. It should feel like you're actually yeah, outside the building, but then with the temperature of like a controlled environment. So yeah, and especially with the last year and a half, last 2 years, also with of course with the COVID, some new attention rose to ventilation and to air quality. So yeah, we're focused on that. Well, here you see the historical development. These older schools where you have plenty of daylight, and then it changed in the 70s and 80s where there was a crisis, of course, so the buildings became cheaper and glass became less. To yeah, now the modern time, and we're changing it again. I'm going to show you this project. This is an older project from us, and I say we wouldn't do this any longer again. So this was couple of, I think it was 15 years ago. This was the vision of, you have this big center place, like this big hall where all the students come together, and from out of this hall you go to your different floors. And of course, what is nice is that it's light, it has air, but as you can see in these pictures, it also has a little bit of, yeah, not very homey feeling. So also the way you actually enjoy the space is also part of the healthiness of a building. Do you feel welcome? Do you feel comfortable? And to be honest, we don't think any longer that this kind of places we designed in the past are actually really comfortable. So we changed the idea of these central places in schools. So you see a lot of schools, they have a big central place with a balcony, and then of course a big stair where you can sit on. And these elements, we changed it a little bit into some smaller spaces. So there are more places in the school where you can actually sit. This is an example, yeah, a little bit close to Eindhoven, Helmond, not that far from where I live. And this was actually a model that we designed, which could easily shrink and become bigger. And there's still the central place, but now it's actually divided into different floors and into different elements of the school. So the school doesn't feel like one big giant building, but you still have air and you still have light. And well, here you can see it. The school is just 3 months ago it was finished, so they use it right now at the start of the school year. So we don't have pictures with people in it yet, but as you can see, we of course we made an atrium and we made air, but it's not as big anymore as the previous schools we designed. It's more divided into different spaces, but always with plenty of light and with really nice places to work, and with light colors. As you can see, you can always, from every position in the building, you either have a vision on natural daylight. So that's what we think is really important because, yeah, natural daylight makes sure that the building is more healthy for you to use. Yeah, and here you can see also the interior elements, just with the future-proof or future-oriented part that I just told you about. That these interior elements, they can also be changed within the building. So we try to detail it like it's yeah, really easily taken out of the building. And this is a little bit a next step actually, because the other project I just showed you here, I'm gonna go back to the facade a little. What we tried to do here was to calculate in the computer how many like cantilevers we needed, or actually um, to make natural shading for the buildings. But in the end, in the building process, it was kind of hard because yeah, of course, educational buildings don't have endless budgets. There was this budget cut where actually the ideas that we had to make this natural shading ended up like a little bit shrunk. It shrunk a little. So the project I'm going to show you right now is in the beginning of the phase. It's a one competition. We entered 4 months ago, and we won it just because of the story that we told. Um, what we thought about is the concept. So we looked at the location, and from if you design let's say a house, or like the old idea is that you shouldn't do a lot of glass on the south facade. I don't know if that's also your idea that you get when you study. I mean, has ever anyone told you that don't do glass on the south side, or well, that's the idea that if you want to design a building and you don't want to make use of a lot of insulation, but you want to make use of natural things. So you don't want to heat up the building, then you shouldn't do glass on the south side, because on the south side the sun will heat up the building fast. So you should do a lot of glass on the north side. Um, so the idea that if you design a school building, don't do classrooms on the south side. That's what I always say. But then we made some calculations, and actually it's easier to filter out direct sunlight from the south side than from the east and west side, because the east and west side the sun will start lower, so you have to make a vertical facade or sunshades, and that's quite hard. But on the south side, you can make horizontal shades. So we made a building which is focused on the north and on the south side. And on the south side, we do this big hangover. We make sure the facade makes a sort of natural sun shader. Well, as you can see in here, and this is what we did. This is the thing we're looking at right now. So we use Rhino, we use Grasshopper to make these calculations on all these different models of the facade, and see how many daylight will come into the classrooms, how many daylight will come into the building, and how many heat will the building have. So we make all these calculations, and with these calculations we go for an optimized algorithm, and the algorithm makes sure that there's there's plenty of daylight within the classrooms, but the building doesn't heat up. And with this algorithm, actually, the facade is made on the south side. And just one example of stuff we're working on right now with parametric design. And we think that there is a lot of future within the parametric design, but of course, for parametric design, you have to put in your own parameters. So it's important that you know the basic stuff. But yeah, the computer can definitely help you with the future of the building. So yeah, I'll show you some images. And then I don't know if you're open for a little bit of discussion, but we're looking for what is next. I mean, we know we want to make future-oriented buildings. We know we want to make healthy buildings, and we know how to combine these stuff. But the step next for us is actually prove scientifically that the buildings are healthy. So yeah, we don't know how to do it yet. It's a sort of leap of faith. So what we're going to do the next couple of years is we're going to go back to all the buildings we designed, all the educational buildings, and we're just going to measure. We're going to measure daylight. We're going to measure CO2. We're going to measure like the formaldehydes, like the toxic stuffs that are in the building. So we're going to measure it, and we're going to yeah, see and ask maybe yeah, the cooperation with some universities, so with TU Eindhoven, TU Delft, because everyone is, I think everyone is looking for the answers. What is a healthy building? And for us, it's I think it's the road to the future, but we're not there yet. So feel free if you have any comments or if you have any questions. No questions. Yeah. We no, we actually we don't have structural designers at our company, and we don't have physicists because we are an architectural company, but we do work together with partners, and we also do work together with preferred partners. But not every process is in our hands. Sometimes um, the constructor or the building physicist is already contracted by a developer, for example. But yeah, we do have our preferred partners because they speak the same language as we like to speak. Um, but yeah, I see for me, the architect is the integrator of all these different things. So yeah, of course, architecture is about designing and being creative. But for me, architecture is also the the knowledge of all these different components that goes into a building to integrate it into yeah one building. So for me and for us, architecture shouldn't stop at just the building, but it should continue with okay, how does the structure work? How does the daylight work? How does the ventilation work? We should all have a sort of common sense about it, and not only go blindly on the like these other partners. They say stuff. So the other partners for us, they are listening to what we kind of want, um, but then they they have to put in their knowledge, because I cannot calculate how thick. Well, of course, you have basic knowledge about constructions, and you have basic knowledge about ventilation and so on. But yeah, we really try to um, yeah, tease them to come up with better ideas on how can we make the integration of the services, how can we make them demountable and stuff like that. So we don't we want to use as less per peer and stuff as possible, because in the end, if you uh, there comes a point that some materials won't be here anymore. So if you want to reuse those materials, you have to make sure that you can demount the building. So that was actually the story about the layers of brand. All these different layers should be demountable and separable from each other. So um, I mean, for us, the facade is you can actually demount it from the structure. You would never make a building anymore where the facade is the structure. So we make a structure, and then we make a facade which is connected to the structure. But yeah, because a structure will be there maybe for 60, 70 years, and if your building is designed really well, it might be there for 100 years. But the facade won't be there that long, because we can already tell that in the future we probably have better isolation material. So yeah, that maybe the facade you got to change it in 30 years. So you need to make sure that if you take off the facade, the building will still stand there. So that's what the layers of brand theory is all about. Yeah. Any other questions? Anything you'd like to know? You're all architecture students. Any anyone's interested in educational buildings or yeah, because I can I can really for me designing educational buildings is it's one of the nicest things because you're making a building for yeah, future generations, um, but it's also if you know how to make a one, you can make them all. It sounds, but it's sort of an idea where you make this educational building. Um, yeah, if you know the structure of an educational building, you can yeah basically all educational buildings can be brought down to three different types, and it might be interesting to study a little bit about that. And maybe we'll next time we'll come tell a story about the different structural types of educational buildings. Uh, it it does a little, yeah, it does, because if you design for the future, um, I think we our most recent buildings, the structure is a little bit over dimensioned, yeah, over dimensioned, because if you really want to cut out every penny, let's say, then you can go to smaller dimensions. So you could maybe you do a column every 5 meters, for example, and then you have this optimized steel structure. But a column every meters is not really flexible because yeah, the classrooms right now there are 7.5 by 7.5 meters. So there's always one column within. A classroom. So what we do is we make a grid of either 8 by 8 or a 7.5 by 7.5 or 7.2. Just it depends a little bit on the side or on the wishes of the school. But yeah, it does increase the cost a little, but basically the cost of the structure, because of the cost of the space plan is not necessarily increased. You need to make walls anyway, so yeah. But the space fund it does, and also the services we make sure that the services we put in are also on a grid. So let's say right now you have a classroom that's 7.5 meters wide, um, but then we think about it that in the future maybe the classroom's going to get bigger, so then it's going to be 10 meters. So our services are always on a like a smaller grid, on a grid of 2.5 meters. So you can easily change the walls, yeah, on this certain grid. Of course, it's not totally free because that's really hard, but it's always thought about a sort of grid where you can change these walls. Any other questions? We sometimes we do, but in we do have a landscape designer in our office. Um, but yeah, he's a busy guy. Sometimes we do our own landscape, and yeah, yeah. So sometimes we do, but not all of my colleagues. Not everyone is fond of designing the landscape, and some architects are better in it than others. For me, what makes it interesting is, um, so yeah, the like the structure or the way a school works is didn't change for the last 60 years for some reason. What makes it interesting is that we try to make buildings which can adapt to changed vision in education-wise. And for me, what makes it interesting is the clients. Like, to be honest, schools are the most nice people to work for because they are used to working in a building that's 40, 50 years old, and they all want a new building. So that's it means it's always nice to when you finish the building and you see this really proud head of the school. Yeah, that's of course one of the best feelings, I think. But, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we also made a grid in the facade, so um, you can you can take out the filling of the grid, and you can put in another filling. So either the filling is completely glass, it will be half glass, or it won't be glass or anything. But yeah, of course, there's always a grid, so it's not completely flexible, but it's flexible within a grid. Yeah, and that is actually different than this building that we did. I mean, this building, the facade, is not really easable or easy to change. So, yeah, basically, this project is the next step from the previous project, and that's how we try to, um, yeah, um, be a little better every time. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that is actually that is one of the things that we want to do, but we're not doing it yet. I mean, it's easy to analyze the data that's already there because we can call to the installation expert and we say, okay, how many daylight is there during a day, because that is already measured. But yeah, it's a good example. The well-being of the people is not measured yet, and it's also scientifically sometimes it is hard to measure because well, I think we've all seen that the last 2 years science is just not like the truth anymore. It's just like how do you present your data, and we for us it's also a search because we don't want to present data that says, okay, our buildings are healthy. No, we actually want to know, and we want to know that the buildings are healthy and that every person will agree they're healthy. So, but yeah, it's that's still a search that we don't know yet how to um, we don't know yet how to do it. So we might in the future we might work together with a yeah, with a behavioral scientist or something like that. Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I mean, in definitely in the healthcare bill, or there's this, of course, you have the well certificate, and also with BREEAM you have some certificates where you can say how healthy your building is. But we actually want to support it with data, and yeah, we don't know yet how to do it because it's still like I think it's really a little bit early on in the process. And of course, there are a lot of researches done already. So yeah, we know about these researches, and I'm not saying that we're gonna invent the wheel again. We're definitely not gonna do it, but um, yeah, we try to get our architecture a little bit further, and it's still a search. Any questions? Well, then I think I want to thank you for the attention. I hope you enjoyed it a little, and maybe we'll see each other in the future.